Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great Monday morning show for you today. I'm so glad to be joined again by my co-host, Batya Ungar-Sargon. Nice to see you, Batya.
Great to see you, Robby.
All right, well, we're going to have dueling radars later, but first, what are we getting to on the agenda?
So it's election day again in Georgia tomorrow. Robby will make his final predictions in the Peach State's Senate runoff race before voting begins. I will probably hedge my bets to keep egg off my face. Plus, swing left's Yasmin Raji will join us. We'll discuss a new proposal from President Biden that could dramatically change how voters choose our next president. But first, the FBI has joined an investigation into a, quote, intentional, willful, and malicious attack on a North Carolina power station that left some 40,000 people without electricity this weekend. Officials say that gunfire was used to disable equipment at two Duke Energy facilities in Moore County. With no suspects identified, the county has declared a state of emergency and a curfew from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. local time.
Local outlet The Pilot reported over the weekend that the attacks occurred concurrently with a drag show in the Moore County town of Southern Pines, where a number of protesters and counter-protesters had gathered outside on Saturday night. However, County Sheriff Ronnie Fields told reporters that police have found no evidence so far or any reason to believe that the two events are related. And I guess some people in the media are kind of looking desperately to find out a reason for them to be connected, because that, I guess, would make for an exciting plot line. What have you learned about this, Batya?
So it seems that a local resident named Emily Grace Rainey, who's a former Army captain, posted an invitation to the drag show protest on her Facebook page. There have been a lot of people protesting this drag show on Saturday morning. And then on Saturday night, she posted, "The power is out in Moore County and I know why." And then it seems that FBI agents visited her in her home. But what her response was, so this is how she described it. She wrote, "Sorry for they wasted their time. I told them that God works in mysterious ways and is responsible for the outage." So to me, what's interesting about this is that the media often makes this mistake. They think that when religious people say, I know why this happened because of God, because God wanted this to happen, that is somehow like an expression of their active involvement in something or their desire for something, when actually it's just how religious people see everything as being the work of, the divine or what have you. So to me, it doesn't seem at all like this person is involved. I think if she was involved, she seems like the kind of person who'd be very proud to admit that. So, I agree with you. It does seem like the media is trying to, create, this connection between the drag show and this act of, it could be potentially terrorism, right? If there was somebody out there with a gun trying to destroy something like, a power source. What do you make of this story, Robby?
No, I don't know. There were other protests of drag events over the weekend. There was a drag story time event in Ohio that was canceled because there were a lot of far-right protesters gathering, and then the organizers thought it would no longer be safe. Which, look, they have the right to have the event, and then the protesters have the right to protest it, and they can march down the sidewalk if they want. We've adjudicated this. I don't know how many times at the Supreme Court by now that even anti-Semitic, explicitly Nazi groups have the First Amendment ironclad right to march down the sidewalk towns in an intimidating and malicious manner. That is something we tolerate because we believe that the government should not have the power to say to restrict what is allowable speech, what is not, what assemblies are not okay, what kind of protests are not okay. No, we give wide deference. Now, if there's violence, if there's other law breaking, property destruction, et cetera, you don't get to do that. But if you're just marching, you're just being peaceful and loud outside, you get to do that. So look, if people, people are going to express their opposition to these events, and these events are going to go forth, that's fine. But that is going to take place, right?
Right, exactly. I was thinking about this more in terms of, if you have somebody who wants to put a stop to something, taking out the power in a way is much closer to civil disobedience than taking up arms against the people themselves. Obviously, I'm not condoning it or supporting it, but it does seem like at this point, there's no reason to connect the two things. And meanwhile, legislative researcher and trans activist Erin Reed tweeted, quote, "A massive convergence of right-wing militants in Columbus, some armed, just shut down a drag holiday event. Organizers expected police to show. Unsurprisingly, they did not. Or they did, dressed in black, yellow. Proud Boys and Patriot Front are emboldened after Club Q. And according to The Intercept, queer communities are welcoming armed far-left protection," quote, after the Club Q massacre. Now, as you've covered at length here, Robby, we still don't know the motive in the Club Q massacre. We still don't know if that was an anti-trans, anti-drag, act, a horrifying act, or if it was just the act of, personal act, somebody who's, mentally. We don't know yet what the motivation there was.
But I have no problem with far-left people, by the way, arming themselves. Actually, and there's a long tradition, not necessarily even far-left, but of black people owning guns for self-protection historically and in areas where the police can't be relied upon to offer protection to them, or police have some kind of racial tension. That's actually what the Second Amendment is for. It can be for personal protection. It's fine. It should not be, portrayed as scary or sinister by conservative media or anyone. Oh no, they're arming themselves. No, that's the right we say that everyone should have. This is not just a right for far-right protesters or something. It's for everyone.
Right. I did hear about a story on Staten Island this weekend, which is a sort of famously working class community where the public library was hosting a drag queen story hour. And again, Proud Boys showed up. There was a big mess there. And just, again, one of these big cultural clashes that are happening around this flashpoint. I wonder, though, I keep asking myself, let's say, there was a planned conversion therapy event, right? Something horrifying like that the left finds horrifying, right? And a group of, let's say Antifa, showed up and cut the power lines, right? To prevent this thing from happening. Would we be judging that in the same way? Or would we be saying, look, civil disobedience is messy and these kinds of things, happen in this way?
Yeah, I would not celebrate the cutting of the power lines in any cases, probably. That can have, also it's not selectively for just that facility, right? This massively
exactly.
can cause tremendous harm to other people. You have to.
Yeah, there was CNN reported a story about a family who had a baby who were desperately looking for a way to keep this baby warm because it was a very cold night and people lost power.
It's the same thing when protesters sometimes when they block, roadways or tunnels or bridges or something, and you inevitably have someone in a kind of medical emergency scenario or someone who's going to give birth and needs to get through. This has happened so many times. I'm well, no, our cause is more important, and which I think that it never comes off that way to, kind of the public at large. I also saw, the last thing I wanted to mention, a lot of people on social media describing those, the Proud Boys and whoever else the far right protesters show up. Their faces are often covered now. Everyone's speculating how many of those people are secretly FBI informants, right? Probably a large number at this point. You should just assume anyone at a right wing event like that is coordinating with law enforcement. I'm kidding a little bit, but not entirely, because there's so many later we find examples of top law enforcement being, if not embedded in these groups, so aware of their activities because they're always engaged. Somehow, often they get themselves into trouble or other criminal issues. Then the FBI gets them, or someone gets them to report and inform on everything going on, and it's just kind of a funny. Anyone on the right, who's goading you into civil war rhetoric, or wants you to take up arms to do something violent or criminal or even civil disobedience. Want to bet their government? It's often the case.
Right.
Just have to say.
Right. And also disobedience is probably the wrong word. I mean, that I think is against the government, not against, some sort of private institution. And again, the story here is that there is zero evidence at this point that this was an attack against the drag show. And I do also want to just point out, I tried to find if there was evidence that this was an all ages drag show, or that there was, that children were invited to this in any way. And I couldn't find any. And so to do this against just a drag drag show, of consenting adults going to enjoy some burlesque. Like, I just think that would be much, much less understandable and excusable. Like, don't protest people for doing something that is just what they like to do if everybody there is a grown-up. I mean, there's really no excuse at that point, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't understand either. All right, well, we will have those dueling radars on the Twitter files. Elon Musk, Matt Taibbi, some big news with that over the weekend. Stay tuned.